Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to start first by saying thank you all for coming out to hear me this morning and for being here to support me. I know it's a little warmer than usual, but it's still real cold. Now, if I'm being honest with all of you, I was a little nervous to preach this morning. Like Courtney said, I preach at Salem Town, and I'm used to an average age of about 80 years old. Clearly, you are not. So I said, this is going to be a little different than usual, and I'm going to have to shift a little bit as my average age has shifted. But in all seriousness, I am honored to be able to be here in front of all of you. I want to start by saying thank you to Joshua and Sally for having me this morning. Where's Joshua? Oh, you're over here. Sally's over here. Thank you. I want to say thank you to the worship team for putting all of this together. I served on the worship team, and I know how hard it can be, so thank you for putting all this together to honor me this morning. When I was thinking about what to talk about this morning, what to write on, I went back and forth. Which text should I choose? I kept going back and forth. I kept flipping through. I thought, I was always taught as a kid, when you open it, you let it fall, and it'll tell you exactly what to write on. I kept doing that, and it just kept opening into Psalms, and I was like, I just don't feel like this is it. So I kept going back and forth. I wanted it to be perfect. I thought about the expectation of my sermon, what everyone would want to hear. My professors would want to hear something that I had learned from them. My friends would want to hear something that sounded like me. And, well, everyone else would just expect me not to put them to sleep. Fair enough. I have to admit that since I started here, it's been a long 2.5 years that have gone by extremely quickly. Yes, Tyra, extremely quickly. I've gone through heartbreak, heartache, stress, stomachache, anxiety, and a list of other things that are probably too long to count. I've lost friends, significant others, grandparents. But if I wrote down all the things that I'd gained, we'd be sitting here till next spring. I'll leave here in May with a different understanding, not just of my own theological background, but of the backgrounds of others around me. I'll know what it means for all of us to bring something to the table. But I think the thing I'll know most is the real meaning of joy and love. Today, I had us listen to multiple passages, but I found the one that I want to focus on is Isaiah 9, 2 through 5. And if I clicked it right, I did. I had to do this on a text for Salem Town. I had to preach on the same one. And I was in front of them, and I opened the Bible, and I was like, I'm going to reread it for you. And I was like, grabbed it, and I was like, 1 minute, please. This is not the right passage. So I had to flip through. So I'm going to read it again. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. If we look at the context of the book of Isaiah, we know that the first 39 chapters are set in a time of war and destruction. Israel and Judea were being overtaken, and the time of judgment was coming. It was absolute and utter devastation, something we unfortunately know a little too well in our own society right now. We're seeing hate spread not just across the world, but in our own communities. We are seeing the forceful attacks by ICE, the kidnapping and murdering of innocent people. We're seeing a lack of food and clean water to certain areas of the country, violence against certain races, genders, and sexualities. And with all of this darkness going on, we have to stop and think, Where is the light? In all of this darkness, is there still any good in the world? My grandparents were a huge influence on my life. My grandfather came from an immigrant family. His grandparents immigrated to New York from Sicily, a small island off of Italy, and settled in rural West Virginia. My grandmother grew up in rural Tennessee, both coming from very large families without a lot of money. But both of them accounted to incredible things. My grandfather was a chemical engineer, and my grandmother was a woman, as we would say, who could not be told what to do. All right. She worked as a secretary in the 60s and 70s, and her kids left school and went home in the afternoons on their own. She also was the only woman pilot in a club of all men. My grandparents wanted us to have the same successes that they did, with opportunities that they never had. I had the privilege, I still and did have the privilege of having two sets of grandparents who did anything they could to make sure that my siblings and I were able to be the best version of ourselves with what our families had. My grandfather, on my dad's side, was so extremely excited for me to come to Wake. When I told him I had applied, he couldn't stop talking about all the things that I was going to learn and all the things that I was going to teach him. And when I reminded him, Grandfather, I have to get in first, he said, oh, that's not going to be a problem. They'll love you. He was so excited for me to be there, and he reminded me that my grandmother, his wife, would have been too. 2 weeks before I started at Wake, my grandfather died. After a 10-year battle with leukemia. 2 weeks before finals last semester, his wife, my dad's mother, my grandmother, died after a 15-year battle with dementia. The morning that my sister called me to tell me that she had passed, I remember asking her, what do we do now? Neither of us had a reply. But and honestly, since then, I haven't really had one. But I remembered what my grandmother told us when we were little. She used to tell us all the time, over and over, that we were her light in the world, which meant that we could never be dim, no matter what anyone else told us. I thought about how dim the world looks right now. The pain, the heartache, the nightmares that people are experiencing on a daily basis. And sometimes I have to admit, I ask God, where is he? And when is he going to get here? I feel like a child who's asking their parent, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are you here yet? And I wonder how a God who loves his people can let these things happen. But then I remember something. I think something that oftentimes we all forget. Sometimes God doesn't give us the solution. He gives us as the solution. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes God doesn't give us the solution. He gives us as the solution. In a world filled with darkness, we are meant to be the light. We are meant to bring joy and happiness to the world around us. We are meant to use our hands and our feet to make a difference in our own communities, a difference in our states, across regions, across the country. One of my favorite verses, and I had us read it today, in the Bible is John 1:5. It's one of my favorites. I'd have it hanging on the wall in my room so I can see it every day. It says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not overcome it." So what does that mean if right now when we're in the darkness? It means that when we allow our light to shine, the darkness cannot. When we go out into the world and share pieces of ourselves, the darkness cannot overtake it. We are the light. Each person in this room has a unique experience, a unique story to tell. And when you share that story with others, the darkness begins to crack. So, what do we do now? We show our light so that the darkness never wins. Amen. Amen.